Hello, how are you doing? I'm James Jack. This is Skills to Pay the Bills, and I'm with Ernestine J. Wilson Real Estate. What does all of this mean? Well, it means that I was thinking about real estate the other day and also a few other things that, cross your mind. When you get to be older, things cross your mind and you ask yourself, what if, why, this, that, and the other. And I was actually looking at these graphics here. They're cockpits, airplanes, specifically a Cessna 172. Yes, I fly airplanes too. And it wasn't just by happenstance. It was a situation where my wife asked me one day, if there was one thing that you wish you could do, what would that be? And I said, I would love to be sitting in the cockpit of a small Learjet, a small corporate jet on the runway, and we're getting ready to take off. So she says, have you ever done that before? No. Do you know how to fly? Well, I took lessons years ago, but I never really learned it at that time. Would you like to try it again? Sure, why not? I mean, who wouldn't want to fly? Then she says, well, aren't you afraid of flying? I said, I'm more afraid of beltway traffic than I am what's happening up there. To me, that's peaceful. So the conversation ended there. A few days later, she came back and she gave me a certificate, and it was a half-hour flight, introductory flight to learning how to fly. Yes! I get the chance to sit in the cockpit of a small aircraft going down the runway, and we take off. No, I'm not afraid of flying. And that brings me to another topic, the fear of buying a home. Well, as I said before, I do real estate. It's not my preoccupation, but I would like to sort of mix the two of them together and see what type of cocktail we'll have here. While I was thinking about what it's like to sit in a cockpit and you get the okay, the clear for, to take off, you've gone through your checklist and everything. You've done this so many times, but you have to do it each time. Number one, by regulation, and also common sense tells you you had better do that, because that one thing that you don't do could cause you to, I don't want to say it, for fear of making someone think that flying is such a terrible thing, but it really isn't. And neither is buying a house, raising a family, applying for a new job, going to the doctor every year, going back to school and getting another degree, if not the first. So she asked me, what would I do if I learned how to fly? And I said, well, I don't play golf. I don't do any of those other things that all the rest of the guys do. But I just have this wonderful feeling about what it's like to be 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 feet above the ground, in the clouds or above the clouds, and feeling free. And I'll tell you more about that in a moment. But first, what I'd like to do is tell you about the conversation I had with myself the other day. A friend told me that she had certain fears about buying a house. And I said, what are those fears? So she told me. So I digested them, rearranged them, and came up with another scenario. And I thought to myself, what she's saying is that she's afraid of dreaming. She's afraid of not being able to afford it. She's wondering, is there anybody out there who can help her? Is it going to be overwhelming? And deep down inside, can she really do this? So those are the topics that we're going to talk about today. And we're going to mix in, of course, the fear of flying. Now, when you buy a home, like most people, for the first time, it's a scary event. It really is, because this is something that's going to cost you more than you've ever paid out before, more than your car, more than your education, more than the kids' education. Well, we don't want to talk about any type of medical problems. We're just going to say more than a lot of things. But you can overcome this fear of buying a home and keeping a home and not worrying so much about whether or not if something happens with the economy, you're going to lose your home, because for the most part, none of us knows what's going to happen in the future. And those of us who think we know really don't know as much as we pretend to know. So let's talk about the dream. How many times have you asked yourself, am I dreaming to think that I should go out and spend all this money for a house? Well, there's nothing wrong with a dream. Dreams are wonderful. I stood before my instructor the first day and he says, "Are you ready?" I said, "I'm ready." And he got excited. Why? Because a lot of people come in very much afraid. So he says, all you have to do is follow my instructions. And this is pretty much what happens when you are buying a home. You put your trust in someone who's going to teach you how to fly. You're not worried about falling or failing or whatever the case may be. You're not worried about whether or not you're going to lose your job a couple of years after you bought the house. Yes, we did have that debacle recently, and some people did suffer from it, but most of us have survived and will continue to survive. And one of the main reasons why we will continue to survive is because the housing market is not like the stock market. They're closely related, but they're apples and oranges. They're fruit, but they're not of the same orchard, I should say. Stocks rise and fall. All we have to have is a climatic catastrophe in another part of the world, and the stock market goes up. Or something can happen, and the stock market can go down. A company can say, well, we didn't reach that level that we thought we were going to, and if it's a big company, it can cause a ripple in the market. But houses usually, or the housing market, I should say, usually doesn't react that quickly. So by the time you figure, oh my God, what's going to happen? Am I going to lose my home? It has all settled down again. So put that thought out of your mind. The main thing is to be prudent and to be cautiously optimistic and to say to yourself, maybe I am dreaming, but I like it because I will have the home of my dreams, not only for me, but for my family too. And that's a wonderful thing. Usually people worry about whether or not they can afford the house. That's the second one. We all like to say, I'm not rich like those people on Wall Street or those Hollywood movie stars or those rap moguls or what, excuse me, expression, excuse me, those rap moguls. I don't have that. Well, you have enough. You have a job, you have a track record, you have credit, you're reliable, and all those other things. So you say, well, I may not have all those things. Is something missing? Well, we'll find out. Why? Because there are people who are going to look at your credit and they're going to look at your potential for buying the house. They're going to look at your bank account. They're going to look at your income and they're going to say, yes, you have 5 out of 10, or you have 7 out of 10, or you have all 10. Those that you don't have, we'll work on them, and within a few months, within reasonable time, you'll be at a point where you will have saved enough money for the down payment and you can purchase the house. So you say to yourself, down payment, I may not have enough money for a down payment. Well, the good thing about today's housing market and also the financial markets is that people like us who don't have a lot of money can get down payment assistance in most states. What we basically need to do is to find those organizations that will work with us so that we don't have to put 20% down or 10% down. We can put as little as 3% down, or maybe no down payment at all. We can even get help with the closing costs because the seller is motivated. That's a good thing. So, how many fears do you have now? Probably not as many as I did. People ask, aren't you afraid of flying? No. What what I'm afraid of is jumping out of a perfectly good airplane and not knowing whether or not I'm going to land in a cornfield or in the river. So I don't take that kind of chance. No, I'm not going to get on a motorcycle that goes 200 miles an hour. No. What am I going to do? I'm going to follow my instructor's advice. I'm going to do my homework. I'm going to learn the rules of navigation. You say, what is navigation? There's help with navigation? Sure, we're talking about flying. See this? This is a flight calculator. If I say I want to go to Denver, I can actually sit here and say I want to go to Denver. This is the type of aircraft that I'm going to be flying in. Hear what the weather conditions are going to be like. Tell me which course I should take. How long is it going to take? How much fuel am I going to consume? And how can I expect to arrive as I anticipated or planned? Technology. Before the technology, same thing. Flight computer. So I know how to do both. Why? Batteries. In case something happens or there's interference, I just pull this out and I start making my little calculations while I'm on autopilot. And the next thing I know, wow, there's Mile High Stadium. That's part of flying, and that's part of fulfilling the dream. And the same is true with buying a house. What you're going to basically be doing is relying on the experts to tell you what you need to do. You're going to find some really good people who are going to say, this house sells for $100,000. The total cost is going to be about 6%. We can get some help from the seller. We can get some help from the lender. We can do this. We got this. Now, first, let's work on the credit. Let's make sure that your job will report that you do work there. Let's make sure that you really want to live in that neighborhood. We're going to drive around and we're going to look at some houses. Wow, we're on the runway. All we're waiting for is a clear to take off. And then the next thing you know, we're rolling down the runway and the instructor says, wheels up. We'll be back in a moment and I'll tell you exactly what happens when you become airborne.
Channel 10 doesn't have ratings and we can't read your mind. The only way we know that you're watching is if you tell us. Let us know you enjoy a show on Channel 10 by leaving a message on our viewer comment line. It's a local call and you don't have to leave your name. Thank you for supporting local television.
Ah, you're back. I was just playing around with my little friend to find out how long would it take for me to go from here to Tampa, Florida, or to Buffalo, New York, or anywhere I want to go. That's because when I learned how to fly, I overcame any fears that I might have had. Now I'm going to tell you the truth. Deep down inside, yes, there are times when I wondered, where am I? One time I was going toward Salisbury, Maryland, and I was heading toward Ocean City, and I bypassed Salisbury, and I couldn't figure out where I was. A few minutes later, all I could see was the ocean on this side, land on this side. Oh dear, what am I going to do? Am I going to faint? We'll get back to that in a moment. There's a lot of confusion about buying a home, and most of it comes from people who tell you, you can't do this. If I were you, I would do this. Why would you want to do something like that? When you start hearing enough of it, you start feeling that feeling inside. And sometimes you say to yourself, this is so overwhelming, I think I'm going to faint. No, you're not. Compose yourself. This is what you're going to do. You're going to do what I did. I turned around 180 degrees and started heading back the way that I came. First away from the ocean and toward the land. Then I climbed. I went higher and higher. Why? Because when you go higher, you can see everything. Credit reports, down payment assistance, properties that are within my price range. Maybe I'm not going to faint. Not only are you going with your instincts, but you're going with what you've been taught. And that is to, first of all, clear your head of all this garbage. Secondly, you're going to go back to the drawing board and you're going to say, okay, this is where I started. This is what my objective was. I'm going to buy a house that I can afford. I'm going to buy a house that my family is going to love. I'm going to buy a house that I may want to live in for the rest of my life. And I think that it's going to be all right. Even if I have to have repairs done, I'll hire somebody who can do the repairs. Maybe I can do some of the repairs myself. I'll go over to Home Depot, get some of their videotapes, watch them. I'll go on YouTube. I'll call up some friends who've had the same problems, and I'll figure it out. Why? Because that's what problem solving is all about. Recognizing the problem and then solving it. So here we are. We're 5,000 feet above the ground. We don't know where we are. What are we going to do? All of this is staring you in the face and you're saying, which one of these do I push? Easy. You go back to what you were taught. Each one of these does something. It tells you how high you are. It tells you where you're going. It tells you how much fuel you've got left. And also there's another one over here that tells you you can call somebody who can help you. So you open the mic and you say, traffic, where am I? Traffic, where am I? And within a few seconds, someone from air traffic control, if there's a local airport near, or someone from Dulles or BWI or Aberdeen or whatever, they're going to hear you, they're going to chuckle, and they're going to say, yeah, we've been watching you for the past 10 to 15 minutes. We wondered how long it was going to take. Where am I? Well, you're heading southwest. What's your destination? I'm going back to Martin State. Okay. They give you a heading. You turn the compass to that heading. You turn your GPS on. Your GPS says, if you follow this direction and you stay on course, eventually you will see Martin State. You'll see the Chesapeake Bay. You'll see all those things that you're familiar with. And the same is true with buying a home. All those things that were laid out for you in the beginning, that down payment assistance, I'm getting it. Wow. Not only am I getting 3% down payment assistance from my lender, I'm also getting some money from the seller. Or I'm getting it from another nonprofit organization sponsored that is under the auspices of HUD. That'll work. The repairs, I know what needs to be done. So I'm not overpaying for a house that's going to make me house poor. What else do I need? Well, you'll figure it all out along with your agent and also the other professionals too. So what do you have to fear? What you have to fear is what you don't know about what your capabilities are. You can do anything that you want to do as long as it's not illegal, immoral, or really a pipe dream. So where are we now? We're at the Chesapeake Bay. I can see the airport. I'll call the airport and tell them that I'm inbound. Inbound means that I can see the runway. The terminology is airport in sight. As you cross the Chesapeake Bay, you radio back and you say, runway in sight. They tell you whether or not you are to stay on course or you to take another course, another heading, because another airplane is going to land in front of you or there's a big transport plane behind you. Can you see them? Yes, I see them at 11 o'clock. But they're at about 10,000 feet. Yes, but you're still in the danger zone. You're not to closing yet. We're days away from closing, and the IRS wants to make sure that it has your records. The bank wants to make sure that you're still employed there. They're going to do another check on your credit to make sure that those student loans that you took out 20 years ago, you defaulted on them, and you thought that they had gone away, but no, they're still there. Chances are that's not you, because you're not the type of person to take chances, right? True. We've not landed yet. We are what they call inbound. But as we get closer, we make corrections. We're about 2,000 feet above the ground. We need to be at 1,000 feet. Why? Because we've got to get below a certain ceiling so that we're actually in what they call the traffic pattern. That's 3 days before closing. Everybody's rushing to make sure that you can get there on time so that you get the keys to your house. You've never done this before. Your heart is just going a mile a minute, and all your friends are saying, "You'll never make it, you'll never make it." But you've been trained, and you say to yourself, "I can do this." Your instructor has already told you, if it's not going to work out, and if we're not on target, we will do a go-around. That means we'll get another week or two to make sure that we get all our ducks in line, and we'll make sure that there's no traffic behind us or in front of us, and that we have the clearance to land the airplane, because landing is closing. When you touch down, that means they're handing you the keys to your house, and it's yours, along with the mortgage. So where are we now? We're on what they call the final approach. That's when you're about 1,000 feet above the ground. You're heading toward the ground at 75 miles an hour, 70 knots, whatever. When I first started learning how to fly, I had to do a lot of takeoffs and landings. Why? Because I was afraid, not of the takeoffs, that was fun, but it took a long time to convince myself that I should be hurtling toward the earth under 2 tons, wrapped around 2 tons of metal at 70 miles an hour, 70 knots, whatever. That's fast. That's a brick hurled out of a window. Not if you know how to adjust your flaps, how to read the wind, how to take a look around and see what the situation is, adjust your speed. And as you see that little picture in the window, there's the runway. It's straight, but there are 2 little white boxes right at the bottom of the runway. They're called refrigerators. That's the target. That's the date of settlement. So you start descending even more. Your speed is becoming slower. Your flaps are down. Tower is telling you everything looks fine. You already know that. Why? Because you're a pilot. You touch down. Wheels hit the ground, the nose is up, and you coast to either the end of the runway or to the designated spot for you to turn off and either go back around and do this all over again, or to the hangar to park your airplane. So, what have we done? We've overcome the fear of whether or not all of this is just a pipe dream, because it's not. You're going to get that house. Secondly, no, you don't have to be filthy rich. That would be nice. A couple of $100 million can buy a lot of house, but you only need a little bit of money. Help! I don't ever want to hear you say that again. You're pitiful. You're disgusting. But I'm going to help you anyway, because that's the fun part. And I know exactly how you feel, because when I was out there heading toward London, I didn't know what to do. I knew one thing: I'm not a seagull, so I had to turn around, get my bearings, get help from somebody who was sitting there watching me and saying, "Okay, enough is enough. This is what you need to do. I'm going to set you back on course, follow my directions, and we're going to land just as we anticipated." Are you going to faint? No. For to faint is to fail. We ain't failing. We're going to closing. And of course, as you get closer and closer, that confidence builds. Your friends, your well-wishers are saying, let's plan a housewarming party. Why? Because they know you're going to get that house. All the naysayers, they're on the sideline, and there you are. You're on your way to closing, and when you get there, there's a bottle of champagne sitting in ice. The settlement attorney or the settlement person is there waiting on you. The buyer's on the other side, or if you're the seller, if you're the buyer, the seller is on the other side, and you just go through 150 million documents, signing and dating and initialing, and before you know it, you're heading toward the hangar. Yes, you can. Well, this is Captain Jack. We had a wonderful time this afternoon, didn't we? We'll be back. Who knows what I'll be? Maybe Dr. Jack with another scenario on what home buying is really like. Until then, you've been watching Skills to Pay the Bills. I'm James Jack with Ernestine J. Wilson Real Estate. You have yourself a wonderful, wonderful